Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of Norfolk's Advisory Committee. I am Arthur Franzak, Chair of the Advisory Committee. We're having a mostly organizational meeting tonight. It's a pretty light schedule, given the ongoing meeting restrictions due to the COVID-19 virus. We are advised and directed to suspend public gatherings and have these meetings on Zoom instead. You're all very lucky to be in this Zoom meeting tonight, which will be the most exciting in the entire Zoomverse, I am certain of. We post all of our Zoom links and materials in our official website, norfolk.ma.us, and that has links in it which takes you to the town meeting website where you'll find all the relevant information. A quick tour of some ground rules. I will go over the agenda. There are no speakers tonight, but if we did have them, we would go in order, invite each speaker to then present. Would then invite people to ask questions. Please use the raise hand icon in your participant control panel. That way I can know who to call upon in the proper order. We encourage folks to ask a question as well as a follow-up question. And beyond that, I would prefer that people get in line a second time just to make sure we can mix it up, let everyone have an opportunity to be heard. Once the entire advisory committee has had a chance to ask questions through one cycle, I will then open it up to the public, who we appreciate and encourage to attend these meetings. And with all that being said, the preliminaries are over. Let me take a meeting roll call here. If folks could please confirm that you are present. Kristen Balish.
Here.
Thank you. Brian Beachkowski.
Yep.
I am present. Michael Huff.
Here.
Jonathan Hurwitz.
Here.
Jackie Katz.
Here.
Susan Klein.
Here.
David Lutz, who is muted.
I'm here.
Outstanding. Thank you, David. And Kiara Moore.
Here.
Excellent. The entire band is back together for another wonderful season of town meeting. Also joining us tonight is the town administrator, Blythe Robinson. Thank you, Blythe, for joining us. I will go down tonight's agenda very quickly. This evening we are, where did you go? Apologies, I have this right in front of me. No, let's go online. I'm going to talk about the warrant as it's currently taking shape. Appreciate Blythe walking us through what she does know. After that, we will talk about the schedule. And lastly, we will, well, we're not really going to be approving minutes tonight. We have made progress in interviewing a candidate for the assistant role who would then help the advisory committee out. I believe we are hoping to make an offer. I hope to hear back soon on that. And it'll be great to have that help. Until then, I'm trying to both take a couple notes. I think tonight will be relatively light, so I think I can do that as well as facilitate. And having said that, oh, did you have a question, David?
Yeah, what I was going to say, I'm technically still the clerk. Do you want me to try to take notes?
Please do. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, actually, yeah, that's correct. You actually take the notes and then the admin then types them up, or?
No, we both take notes and then we compare notes. And
oh, okay, that's
usually her notes are much more thorough. Sue's were more thorough than mine, especially if I was involved in something, because I would stop taking notes. So,
thank you.
Yeah, but the other, at some point, when we get to the minutes part, I'd like to discuss that on the agenda. So.
Sure, very good.
Okay.
Okay, so having said that, Blythe, you were able to share with us a document that contains your notes about where we stand with the warrant. And I believe I have that shared now on screen.
Great, thank you. Yep, you do.
Okay, excellent.
So far, the warrant is shaping up to be quite short this fall. I probably just jinxed myself, but sorry if I'm a little punchy. Last night's select board meeting was a little bit late.
I heard that. I heard they broke our record.
Maybe, I don't know. 12:30 was certainly a record for me.
Wow.
But anyway, no, with all seriousness, it's shaping up to be quite short, and I'll take you very quickly through it. Budget transfers, we do expect to have some transfers. This year, we have a couple of things going on, such as a foreclosure auction, which is going to happen in hopefully early November. And we're spending some funds to make sure we can do as well at that auction as we hope to, and may need to replenish some funds there. We've had, between some litigation and the dog hearing, a few other things, it's been a very busy summer. I'm afraid that we're all already kind of in a difficult situation with town council expenses. We need to fund stormwater, continued stormwater work this year. And I've been talking with Todd about last year for the OPEB funding. We had a separate article. We could do a separate article, or we could include it in transfers this year to continue to add to that. So those are, it's a short list, but a couple things on it that we're tracking. And we do have some in the budget, and let me just start with that, is looking a little more, is more favorable than it was when we passed it in June. You've probably heard, if you've kept your ear to the ground, that the state is using some of the CARES monies to level fund Chapter 70 and unrestricted government aid. So that we budgeted less in both of those categories. So that's about an additional $180,000 that wasn't planned for right now. Besides that, the MEC grant came through, and so we had budgeted $95,000 that we were going to be able to reduce the budget by further in the fall if we needed to. We don't need to do that now, so we can consider whether we wanted put it into something like OPEB or reduce the budget. I mean, we have options, which is a terrific place to be. So that's just a quick overview. And we are noticing that some of the revenue accounts are doing fairly well. We've had quite a lot of building permits being pulled. Assessor's office is actually quite busy following up on all of those. Home sales are exceedingly strong. And tax collections have been on track. So back to the list. Right now, we have no unpaid bills from prior year, but it's always a good idea to leave this on here for the just in case that might come up. We do have state transportation rideshare, Uber, Lyft funds again this year. It's 1 year's worth. It's only $1,200, so we're trying to decide whether that's even worth to bring an article, or we should try to save it up for a year or two before we ask to spend it for something. I do expect, depending on where we end up with free cash, we will consider some capital projects. I mean, we do want to be very careful this year because depending on who you ask, we had a light winter last year, maybe a tough one this year. There's actually concern out there among other town administrators that FY22 budget will be a challenge as well if the state can't maintain revenues. You certainly know what's happened to that to state revenues in the last 6 months. So we're going to want to be very careful that we keep, I think, free cash at a good place, but still there are things that we need to buy and replace. So I do expect there'll be capital expenditures from free cash and maybe borrowing, but I don't have a good handle on that yet. We're also studying number 6, possibly a small water enterprise fund project, but don't have any details ironed out. The CPC article is about the acquisition of the land adjacent to the Pond Street Recreation Complex. You may have heard that the state legislation to have that transfer from the Department of Corrections has finally made it through the State House to the governor's desk and signed. So CPC wants to bring an article to have approval for the dollars to pay to buy that. The total cost is about just over $17,000. It's $400 an acre times 43. There may be some other costs to it, but that's the basic, and that would actually allow that transfer to happen. Do expect a report from the B1 committee to give an update on what they're thinking about in the town center. They've been studying a different version of the chapter 40 of the state laws called 40R, which is a different approach to affordable housing and development that's transit oriented, and with a train station in downtown, we certainly are you can tick that box. So they want to make a very short presentation, just kind of tell people what they're working on. Very late last night, the select board for this item number 9 did see a draft of an updated bylaw on animal control. This has actually been something we've been thinking about working on since April, when another incident caused us to do so. Our bylaws are out of date since the state law changed on animal control in 2012. So it's time to bring those up to date. The board looked at that at the late hour and decided that they want to make sure that we were had time to really discuss this, and so they're going to want to probably push this till the spring. But we wanted to have it ready in case they wanted to move ahead now. And then the last item right now is to bring back again, you recall we did these last year, various street acceptances. Rich McCarthy can tell you more about this than I can, but I know at least on Meeting House, on all of them, we weren't able to affect the acceptance within the 120 days after town meeting. So basically that vote has to happen again. I think that there's going to be a different approach to Meeting House and Liberty Lane, and perhaps take those streets rather than try to work that out with the developer. I'm afraid I just don't have on the tip of my tongue what we would do with Silver Fox Run. So I expect we'll take the animal control bylaw off here. What we probably will add is that, as I mentioned earlier, there's additional funding from the state for those 2 grants. And when we had been working with our school districts to lower the budget in the spring, there was an understanding that if we, revenue came back up, we would proportionally, quote, give it back. And so I expect that we will have an article, a separate article to transfer, not transfer, probably depending on how the math works, raise and appropriate about up to 2/3 of that 180,000 back to at least Norfolk schools. I don't think we're going to need to transfer anything to KP. We've had a couple of conversations with them and they're doing okay. But we did make a commitment to our local schools, and that would give us a chance to honor that. So that's a really quick overview of where we stand, Arthur.
Excellent. Thank you for the rundown. Some folks have joined us, including Kevin Calcutt from the Select Board. I heard you guys had a late meeting last night, Kevin. Thank you for joining us. I would remind people who've joined us that this is recorded. And with that, let's take questions. Susan, you had the first question. And there's only one Susan now, so there's no confusion. I mean, I miss first and second Susan, but nonetheless, this does make it simpler. Susan, yes.
Oh, well, one of the things that I was going to say, Blythe addressed both of them, but I'm going to elaborate. One was when she was speaking about the extra money, I was going to raise the point that we had committed to giving it back to the schools, but she's expecting that to be an article. So that's a moot point now. And the B1 committee voted to postpone bringing any articles forward for this town meeting. We're hoping to be ready for spring town meeting. I am not 100% on that, but that's the goal now. There's just no way to get it all done in time for November. So they may be still wanting to make a presentation on what 40R is and get some feedback, but we are not moving forward with articles for this warrant.
Can you talk about what 40R is for people in the audience?
Well, there's people who could probably answer it better, but 40R is a subsection of the Affordable Housing Act where it says that you're going to commit a specific area to residential density. So I believe the fine print allows you to say no to 40Bs in other areas because you are committed to a 40R in a specific area, and it's a much denser residential area. So like, for example, you could build on the Stop and Shop lot, for example, maybe you could put in 85 to 95 apartment units, and that would be considered our residential density. And so, but there's a lot of caveats to it, and we have not finalized everything, but that's the general overview, the way I understand it. And again, I am definitely not an expert on 40R. So if I said anything wrong, feel free to correct me.
Well, that's good. Just looking for the general thrust. Thank you. And I will go to Jonathan. You had the next question.
Yes. Blythe, early in your review, you mentioned that there were some unexpected or higher than typical legal expenses. So not asking for any disclosure of what you may not be legally permissible, but is there a list of what those legal issues are that's shareable and focused on what department or what part of the town? Are there any trends there? Because at least I'm inferring it sounded certainly more than like one or two types of things, or at least certainly sizable.
Oh, sure. So I can give you a couple examples right now. I am actually waiting for the July and August bills, but we've had a couple things going on. Number one, in no particular order, we expect to be going to mediation, the planning board, regarding the Fern Ridge subdivision that has not been completed as it was supposed to be. The developer owes the town monies, and the developer is unhappy because he wanted to be able to give us less open space and sell some of it, and we're at an impasse on that, and that's not covered by insurance. A second item is that you may have noticed that we paved Lake Street this spring, and we were fully planning to be in compliance with the agreement with one of the abutters that was a lawsuit a couple of years ago. The owners do not want to give us access to their property to complete the work of the conservation order of conditions. And so we've been trying to work that out and spent several $1,000s with town council trying to work with her to sort that out. And that's only earned us a claim from her, which I'm sure if it doesn't go her way, will end up in a lawsuit again. So that's an issue. And then, as I mentioned, we've spent a fair amount of time in two very long meetings with council support addressing the dog issue that was on last night's agenda. So those are just that, but we're also busy with the street acceptances are taking time. We've had a couple of very challenging public records requests for which we needed help to properly script our reason for not providing the records that two parties had asked for. I keep a spreadsheet of all these things. I'd be happy to share it with you at the upcoming meeting, but those are the big ones that come to mind, Jonathan.
Okay, thank you. No, I just speaking for myself, I'd certainly be interested in seeing the list if you have it. Certainly not urgent, but at
Sure.
whatever point. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Next question to Kristen. Go ahead, Kristen.
Two questions. I'll keep them brief, both for Blythe. So I had a question about the ACO article, and if the answer is I should just watch last night's meeting when it's posted. I only lasted till 10 p.m., so I didn't make it through the whole thing. So my question is, you had mentioned that the update to the bylaw would be because and maybe I'm misinterpreting, that we're out of compliance or just out of current state from what has changed since 2012. If that's true, is there a reason we wouldn't do it sooner rather than later? Is it one of those things where it's been out of compliance or out of date for so long it doesn't matter to push it to spring? Or would there something specific we need to get
Well,
our heads
given that
around.
we've just been through a very difficult situation.
Mhm.
There are some decisions that need to be made. I mean, things like the fee schedule, we're not changing.
Right.
And, we're still subject to the law since it's changed, even though it's not in our bylaws, but there were some hiccups that we experienced. For instance, our old bylaw really wasn't in compliance with how long the animal control officer could have impose a restraining order, and that proved difficult with just how complicated it is to
Mhm.
plan the timing of meetings. And our bylaw doesn't clearly specify what the penalties are for either, and fines for either a loose dog or someone who doesn't follow the order for a dog that's been deemed nuisance or dangerous. And we split these out because they're two very different situations. And then the select board was a hearing officer last night, as boards typically are, but other towns do it differently. Some towns have it be a public safety officer or somebody else. And when I was in Wellesley, I was the hearing officer. Thankfully, I didn't have to have a hearing. And so I think it's important for the town to take some time to make sure that however we decide to do is right for us.
Mhm.
And so there are some decision points to probably talk through. And
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And then my second question is around the street acceptances. You mentioned that we might take a different approach with Meeting House and Liberty Lane versus Silver Fox Road. It's road, not run. I know that because it's right behind my house.
Thank you.
And we got it wrong last time. I think we had to redo it last time too because it was the wrong name.
Okay.
Susan might remember. So can you speak more about why those would be different approaches?
So just generally, I said I'm going to need Rich to really step in for this, but on Meeting House and Liberty Lane, those are, I guess, as a result of the whole development that happened in that area. I think the developer's name was Mr. Borelli, and we have some issues with him for non-payment of his sewer usage fee that's been going on for several years. And he hasn't been, how should I say, as willing to work with us to take these streets over. And so we may want to approach it as a taking rather than a friendly handoff of the deed from him to us. And so we want to get that behind us, and that may be the approach we have to take. Silver Fox Road, it's just escaping me what the detail is on that.
Okay. But they may be kind of separated. It might be Meeting House and Liberty Lane as one, and Silver
I think
Fox
we'll probably take them up as one article,
Okay.
but handle them as separate motions.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Very good. Brian, your question is next.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Now, understanding the COVID restrictions, we may want to keep this meeting short as well. But there's been a couple times where we've had meetings and the town has wanted to get updates on the safety building, public safety building, and where that is and what the status is, as well as if we've heard a couple times that there may be a potential to need to expand Freeman Kennedy with the additional wing. It may be good to put those out to the community ahead of time. And I'm not sure if town meeting, especially when in times of social distancing, is the right place. It would be nice to use this as an opportunity to have a discussion around those topics so important to the community.
I can give you a quick update on those if that's okay, Arthur.
Please, go ahead.
So we are within, I'd say, a couple weeks of wrapping up our issues and that led to mediation with the police station architect. And our goal as soon as possible after that is to hold a town hall style meeting this fall where people can come by Zoom and get an overview about what happened with this project, why wasn't it on budget, why did it take so long, all the details that we can share to help and what we've learned from it to do differently in the future. I think it's too complicated a topic to take up in a short presentation that the moderator may want at town meeting. I think our community deserves a thorough overview. So I think what we're going to do is want to do it soon, but not then. And we also want to do it before we even think about starting the fire station, because we need to, kind of heal from what happened. On Freeman Kennedy, it's the select board and the school committee agreed earlier this spring to submit a application to the state MSBA for funding, and the thrust was that Freeman Kennedy is reaching overcrowding. I talked to Ingrid about this just recently, and she hasn't heard yet, which is good news. I guess the MSBA is planning to vote on who they're going to invite into their program at their October meeting. And so we're anxiously awaiting that, because the funding for that would be much easier for the town to manage if it was almost half funded by the state. And then coming up at the next select board meeting in early October, I'm planning to, with Todd, make a presentation to the board of a much more thorough and detailed capital improvement plan than we did last year. And that will I hope help you and the community better understand what we need to work on, and have us be able to start to think about how we're going to finance projects and strategy in the future.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Blythe.
Arthur, I can't raise my hand now that I'm a co-moderator or whatever.
But I'm keeping an eye on you visually, so feel free. Please, David, go ahead.
Can I ask a
Yeah,
question?
perfect.
I have a couple quick questions, and actually one of them may be a broader discussion for after we get through the articles. You mentioned some sort of stormwater expenditure, Blythe. Is that something that it's town capital money, or is it water department capital money?
It's town general fund. It's not part of water. It's the federally mandated MS4 permit. It took over from what used to be called NEPDs. And it's we're obligated to meet certain milestones. Every community is, in order to be treating, and not necessarily treating stormwater, but taking measures to improve the quality of stormwater. And this past year, we got a earmark from the state with 2 other towns that supplied about $17,000 of our annual $50,000 cost. And we funded the rest at last fall's town meeting. This year, there's no grant, so the $50,000 is on us in order to keep doing all the work that we need to do to meet the permit.
And sort of second question is, it's unrelated, but you mentioned there's issues with the Fern Ridge developer. He has an order of conditions from a planning board, right? And from the Conservation Commission. Is he trying to change those?
So the plan that was approved back when it was,
like 7 or 8 years ago. Yeah.
Yep, he was going to pay the town $2,000 per lot towards the maintenance of open space, provide a certain number of acres of open space to the town. The town began plowing the street before it was accepted, and he was to pay us for that. He hasn't in the last 3 years. And he hasn't paid some of the taxes. So
Yet he wants to sell some parcels that were restricted under his plan.
He wants to sell a portion of one to a butter. So it hasn't gone well, and we need to move forward to try to resolve it.
Right. Thank you. And then the last question, Arthur, I don't know if it's appropriate to discuss it now, but it's about 2 months from this date, and there's been very little change in the way meetings can be held since our June town meeting. Has there been discussion about what's going to happen on November 7th, or if November 7th or 17th, I mean, is an actual viable date, location, all that kind of stuff?
So I have reserved both the middle school and the high school at this point. I've got a lock on both of them, and I need to catch up with Jay about that, whether he wants to do it indoors or do it outdoors. Hey, do it under the lights. As someone said to me, you play football in the cold. What what the heck?
Absolutely.
Are you trying to kill off of some of our population, Blythe?
I wouldn't want to do that. I know our counterparts in Rentham and Plainville are also planning to be at the high school, and the good news, if you will, about the legislation that finally passed in the spring is that during the emergency, we can have the meeting out of town. So we can use the high school, whether we use, a combination of 3 different rooms inside, or we stay outside. I need to, like I said, liaise with Jay about what his thoughts are. The good news is I think we're able to, have another very short meeting with not a lot of controversy, I wouldn't say, from this list on the warrant.
That actually lent another question. Are there any, when does the warrant close, and are there any rumors of citizens petitions that you've heard of reemerging?
Well, I don't think that I'm the first
again.
one to tell. The warrant closed on September, last week. Sorry, the date.
So we can't add to it. A citizen's petition can't be entertained at this point?
So we learned from the spring that the interpretation of the law is that citizen's petition can be taken up until the date the warrant is executed, regardless of what you set for a date. And now I would point out that a special town meeting requires 100 signatures, not 10, as you would for an annual. So it's a bigger bar to get over. But I would also say that if it's an ongoing concern, the solution is to change the town's bylaws to be clear how late citizens petitions could be submitted. I checked in with the town clerk. She had not had anyone ask for a petition, but it doesn't mean one won't come. We plan to sign the warrant at the October 20th select board meeting.
Thank you.
Sure.
October 20th is the signing and executing. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Any other, well, actually I had one question about the, for lack of a better term, school refunding article. And I'm thinking back to earlier discussions that we had about once money gets taken out, in order to put it back, there's procedure involved. The more procedure, the more, I don't know, risk, or perhaps something gets approved, perhaps it doesn't. I guess that there really is no lighter weight or more streamlined way of putting money back other than just, I think it's just a majority vote. Is that
Yes. Correct? Yes.
I keep wondering, what can we just put it in? It's like, no, we've already approved the budget, so the budget's set. I'm just wondering, is there any simpler, more streamlined way for us to put back what we all had expected from a procedural perspective?
I don't think so, Arthur, but if there's one, we'll try and find it.
Okay. And any other questions about the contents of the rather light warrant? Any questions from the general audience? Hearing none, we can go into the wonderful world of scheduling, our next agenda item. Now, looking at what we had covered so far in these articles, what, 3 meetings, 4 maybe, to then talk about this, to then have it covered? Blythe, I mean, I'm thinking we're going to have 1 meeting to go over just the general budget. There's several, some capital expenditures here, talk a bit about unpaid bills, expenses and such. And also, of course, talk about the school refunding, excuse me, the refunding article as that comes through. We can probably cover that in one evening, correct, Blythe?
I would think so. I don't know if you want to have the CPC in to talk about Pond Street,
Do folks have,
or is that well known to everyone and not a concern?
I think we should have Rich in to discuss the issues surrounding Silver Fox Road and Meeting House and Liberty Lane. Blythe, I know you said you don't know all the details. Is Silver Fox Run the one that's off of Maple?
Maybe.
The one that connects half of it?
No, it's
Is it
off
the
of
one
it's off
that-
of Miller. Half of it's actually Franklin. So the first half is
Okay,
Norfolk, the second
okay.
half is
I'm
Franklin.
thinking of the wrong street. Okay, thank you. But I would think that should be an agenda just in case, again, just in case there's any questions that come up at town meeting,
Okay.
we really need to be able to answer them.
sure.
I don't like going into town meeting blind, and this seems like something that might irritate people. So I like to have the information. So
Okay, so we're talking about one more budget-focused meeting, another meeting where we could talk about the street acceptances. That would also, I think, be a good opportunity to talk about the animal control bylaw.
We're going to take that off, Arthur.
Oh, I'm sorry, right, you had said that.
Well, we can do CPC at that point, rather do a budget meeting and then CPC and Rich.
Okay,
Just a suggestion.
that sounds good to me. So, and I think you had said, Blythe, that the next meeting of the select board is early October.
October 6th.
Okay, so the bottom line here is we really don't need to meet until October 2nd. I'm sorry, 7th. October 7th is the first Wednesday of the month. That still gives us 4 meetings to take care of whatever business that we need to.
Yeah, I think that would be great. We'll have the warrant, obviously, will be drafted for you, and I'll get it to you before that if it's ready. And that will give, and Todd and I should have the handle on free cash and be able to go over with you our strategy for all of that.
So we're not going to need the next 2 meetings. If people could please mute their audio so all the weeping and mourning and loss doesn't come, that we're not going to have to meet in the next couple of weeks. But that's great news. That is great news. I think that we will post them the next meeting for October 7th. And maybe citizens petitions will manifest, maybe not. But I think those 2 meetings should put us in good stead. Any other comments folks have about the schedule? Okay, which brings us to the final item, minutes. David, you had some thoughts.
Yeah, I was looking at the website in preparation for this meeting and noticed that a bunch of the meeting minutes that we approved through the winter and spring are posted as unavailable. And I'm just wondering what needs to happen to make those available. I mean, we were under a lot of pressure to make our meetings, our minutes available. We approve them and they're not available.
Let me check with Sue and the clerk's office and just see what happened at some point. I'm not sure who in the past was actually uploading the website, but that's not a hard thing to do. So let me just follow that one down, David.
And I don't know where we left off. The other issue is I honestly can't remember where we left off in terms of approvals. I'd have to go back and look at the agendas for previous meetings, but there's probably 1 or 2 that we haven't approved that Sue may have been taking. The last couple, probably the last 2 or 3 before Springtown meeting. But everything else I think was up to date by the first couple weeks of May or when we left off. So
Sure, I can find out what happened.
ooh, there's nothing of it. I didn't go that far back, Blythe, or whoever's doing that, Arthur.
I am, that's me.
We've approved a lot of those.
Okay. Yeah, this is the mytowngovernment.org site. So, okay, well, I would appreciate an update as you get information, Blythe. Thank you.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I will post the next meeting, work with Blythe. At that point, I hope we will have a administrator who can help us out in a dedicated go forward basis. That would be exciting. Is there any other?
Arthur,
Yes.
if you're okay with it, I can have Scott make her an offer and get that going.
Yes, actually, Scott sent me an email before this meeting, which I hit reply so fast. Boom. Yes, I thought she was great. Outstanding candidate, lots of experience, who was very motivated to learn about the town and thought this would be a very interesting and informative way to engage. And all of us on the call assured her that she would get to know all kinds of town business by helping out here on the advisory committee. So.
She's actually moving to Norfolk, which is part of why she's interested in joining and learning.
Right, from Boston, yeah. Good, well, keep me posted on that. I would love to have her as part of the team here. Any other questions that folks have? We've exhausted the agenda items. Okay, thanks so much for attending, and I will send you all an email with the information for the next meeting. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Bye.
Thank you.